I think if they switch coaches, the Knicks
Silly
win.
start 5.
And I love Thibs, but Thibs, the way he coach offense is old.
Yeah.
Like his style is old.
He think he still got D Rose, bro.
Yeah.
When we look back at the 2025 playoffs, one thing will stand out. The Eastern Conference was up for grabs. The Celtics, heavy favorites, collapsed under the weight of injuries. Jason Tatum tore his Achilles. Porzingis, with a mysterious illness, was a shell of himself. The Cavaliers, the best regular season team in the East, fell apart too. Key injuries to their best players, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and Evan Mobley. Cold shooting after running hot all year. And just like that, the bracket opened up. The Knicks had a real path. By the time the Eastern Conference Finals tipped off, New York was one of the healthiest teams left, and maybe the most complete. They had Jalen Brunson, an MVP-level offensive superstar, and around him, a cast built for modern playoff basketball. Karl-Anthony Towns, the best shooting big man in league history and one of the most skilled offensive players ever at his size. Mikal Bridges, a mid-range specialist who could get a clean look almost any time and also defend the best wing scorers on the other end. OG Anunoby in the midst of an offensive breakout year while remaining one of the best all-around defenders in the entire game of basketball. Josh Hart, an elite rebounder for his size, a one-man fast break, and among the most versatile players in the entire league. Mitchell Robinson, the healthiest he's been in years, and an absolutely dominant force on the offensive glass. Deuce McBride, a strong point of attack defender and a high-volume three-point shooter, all on one of the best value contracts in the NBA. In the eyes of many pundits and analysts, 2025 wasn't supposed to be the year that the Knicks won the East. But by May, it very well could have been. Hell, by the Eastern Conference Finals, it should have been. And that's what makes the ending so painful. They had the roster, they had the path, they had the health. What they didn't have was the coach. Tom Thibodeau raised the floor of this franchise. He helped bring the Knicks back to relevance and stability. But now, in the biggest moment of his tenure, he was the one capping the ceiling. Before we go any further, let's be clear. Tom Thibodeau deserves credit. Real credit. When he took over in 2020, the Knicks weren't just bad, they were laughable. A punchline. In the 19 seasons before Thibs arrived, they'd made the playoffs just 4 times. They had become a running joke. A punchline on ESPN.
We are the laughingstock of the league right now.
An organization defined by dysfunction and disappointment. Thibs helped end that. He brought back structure and consistency. He won Coach of the Year in 2021, led the Knicks to 41 wins in a shortened season, and made the playoffs in 4 of his 5 years on the job. That's stability that Knicks fans hadn't seen in decades. He gave the team an identity, tough, disciplined, defense first. His teams rebound, they communicate, they play hard every single night. He built a culture that felt earned, not manufactured. For a fan base starved for stability and tired of being clowned for 2 decades, that really mattered. Thibs helped restore dignity and respectability. He raised their floor. But championships aren't won by a team's floor, they're won by a team's ceiling. And that's the part that Thibodeau's never been able to reach. He's not the coach that unlocks talent. He's not the coach who adapts on the fly. He's not the coach who squeezes every drop out of a great roster when it matters most. The Knicks as a franchise are at a point where they don't just need respectability, they need more. He's the coach who gets you back to relevance. But when the bar shifts from respectability to rings, that's where he hits his limit. And the Knicks are now running face first into that limit. This series wasn't lost in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. It was lost in January, in February, in March. The signs were all there. It starts with Thibs' defining trait, his rigidity. The Knicks starting 5, Brunson, Hart, Bridges, OG, and Towns, logged over 2,500 possessions together between the regular season and the playoffs, despite mediocre to flat-out poor results. That's an astronomical number for a single 5-man unit. To put it in perspective, the Knicks starting 5 played more than the Celtics starters have played together over the last 2 full seasons including their title run in 2024. And yet, Thibs almost never deviated. Despite glaring offensive stagnation and a healthy roster for most of the season, he rarely explored alternative combinations. The most effective 5-out lineups, the ones that could have maximized Brunson's gravity and Towns' spacing, were used sparingly, if at all. The Knicks' 4 best players, Brunson, Towns, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges, shared the floor with Deuce McBride for fewer than 100 possessions across the regular and postseason. In contrast, those 4 shared the floor with Josh Hart more than 25 times more often. This is despite the fact that playing with 5 shooting threats, something we saw the Pacers weaponize to reach the finals, isn't just a stylistic choice, it's a tactical advantage. When you surround Brunson and Towns with 3 credible and willing 3-point threats, especially someone like McBride who shot over 40% on catch-and-shoot threes on high volume, it completely changes the geometry of the floor. Suddenly, any help defense becomes a risk. You overhelp on Brunson, and it's a wide-open 3 for Towns or McBride. Overhelp on Towns, and OG or Bridges cuts backdoor. With 5 spacers, the Knicks become nearly impossible to guard. In the 27 possessions the Knicks played this postseason with 5 shooters, they scored an astounding 152 points per 100 possessions and outscored their opponents by 17 points per 100. It's similar to the blueprint that the Pacers used. Their 5-out starting lineup, featuring 5 willing shooters who range from good to elite, outscored opponents by 17 points per 100 possessions during their run to the finals. That kind of offensive ceiling was within the Knicks' reach, but Thibs never reached for it. This was especially evident in how he deployed Karl-Anthony Towns. Towns is one of the best 3-point shooting bigs in NBA history, one of the best deep shooters in the league, full stop. And yet under Thibs, he was largely cast into the same role once occupied by Julius Randle, forced to create off the dribble, operate out of the post, and initiate offense from 20 feet out. The result? Towns, a career 40% shooter, ended the regular season with a lower 3-point attempt rate than Julius Randle, a career 33% shooter. In the postseason, Randle finished with more 3-point attempts than Towns, despite playing over 100 fewer minutes. That's not just a misallocation of talent, it's a fundamental failure to leverage one of the most unique offensive weapons in the league. It wasn't until Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals, down 0-2, that Thibs finally made a change. Not to a 5-out look, not to add shooting, but to insert Mitchell Robinson for Josh Hart, reverting to a rim-protecting big over a connector wing. Going to Mitch was reasonable and an improvement over sticking with the status quo, but even in desperation, Thibs chose familiarity and comfort over spacing and adaptability. Some analysts and fans have pinned the Knicks' struggles on a supposed bad fit between Brunson and Towns, but if you have 2 elite offensive talents, you don't hedge, you commit. You lean into an offense-first identity and you optimize it. Thibs didn't do that. Instead, he chose half measures by playing them with Hart for nearly 85% of their minutes together. And in doing so, he exposed the worst version of the fit without ever exploring its ceiling. Thibs had the tools, he just didn't use them. And then, as the season teetered on the edge, he started throwing darts. The last few games of the conference finals saw Thibs doing the one thing he had avoided for 6 months, experimenting. But it was too late. He was forced to try new lineups and rotations in the highest stakes games of the year. Games that could have been informed by data, chemistry, and confidence if they'd been tested earlier. He spent the entire regular season sticking to what he knew, and in the end, he didn't have the right adjustments to go to. The Knicks didn't have too little talent. They didn't just get outplayed, they got severely outcoached. At this point, we've seen the movie. Not just this season, not just in New York. This is who Tom Thibodeau has always been. In Chicago, Thibs helped restore pride to a historic franchise. His teams defended, they played hard, and racked up wins. But even in his most successful years, the cracks were visible. Playoff stagnation, an unimaginative offense, and an ever-narrowing that left little room for flexibility or surprise. Behind the scenes, the issues were just as persistent. The Bulls organization cited a lack of open communication and flexibility when they fired him, even after 5 straight winning seasons. Minnesota offered a fresh opportunity, but the same patterns reappeared. Thibodeau leaned heavily on former Bulls players like Luol Deng, Taj Gibson, and Derrick Rose. He mismanaged the Jimmy Butler saga, alienated Karl-Anthony Towns, and contributed to a deeply dysfunctional culture that culminated in Butler's now infamous practice meltdown. Even with two young stars in Towns and Wiggins, Thibodeau failed to make meaningful strides. The system didn't amplify their strengths, only rehash what had worked for him years ago. He wasn't adapting to the then modern NBA. And even though the Timberwolves made the playoffs once during his tenure, it was clear that he wasn't the person to build or lead a sustainable contender. He was fired mid-season. And it's not that Thibodeau is a bad coach, he's not. But in 3 different cities, he's followed the same path. Raises the floor, brings structure and respectability, then stalls. And for a franchise with legitimate title aspirations, that's not enough. And the numbers back it up. With this year's loss to a lower-seeded Pacers team, Tom Thibodeau now holds the all-time NBA record for most playoff series lost as the higher seed. Let that sink in. More than any coach in league history, and he's only been a head coach for 13 seasons. That's not just bad luck. That's a trend. That's a ceiling. If the Knicks are serious about contending, the next coach can't just be another steady hand. They need someone who can evolve the system, not just preserve it. Jalen Brunson is in his prime. They have a fully formed core with Brunson, Towns, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges, all in their prime years. This is not a team that should be happy to be here. This is a team that should be trying to win a championship, and now. And yet, when the moment came, they didn't look like a true contender. They looked like a team stuck between identities. You can't play down the middle at this level, especially when your best players demand a different approach. Brunson and Towns demand an offense-first identity with defensive schemes that support rather than expose their weaknesses and limitations. Trying to split the difference, as Thibs did by overcommitting to non-shooters like Josh Hart and never playing 5 out, only makes the fit look worse than it actually is. And that's what frustrates so many Knicks fans right now, because it isn't a Karl-Anthony Towns problem. Towns had the best defensive on-off swing of any qualified Knick in the playoffs. The team was over 7 points per 100 possessions better defensively when he was on the court. He didn't fail to anchor the defense. He was being deployed in a scheme that never played to his strengths. And now, because the system broke down, the narrative has flipped, blaming the roster instead of the coach. According to recent reports, Thibodeau may be safe as head coach. Leon Rose still believes in him, and so does Jalen Brunson. But if that's true, it's a decision that could cost the Knicks everything, because the real issue isn't loyalty, it's vision. The Knicks have a championship window. It won't stay open forever, and every season spent trying to win his way is one they could have spent chasing the ceiling this roster is actually built for. That's not failure, that's fear. Thibodeau deserves credit. He restored dignity, he raised the floor. But the next step, the leap from stability to true contention, won't come from the same voice, the same system, the same playbook. It will come from someone willing to coach the Knicks not as they were, but as they could be. And if New York wants to win a title in the Brunson era, that change has to happen now.